Chapter 7. It was nearly 11 before Aisha and Ben forced Jade to warm up indoors. The church had been set up as the search and rescue crew headquarters and was teeming with volunteers and first responders. A helicopter with searchlights was circling the area, and the pararescue team from Fairbanks was due to land any minute. Wilderness search and rescue dogs were on their way, and Aisha had already run to Jade's home to get a sample of Dez's dirty laundry so the canines could try to pick up her scent. Jade couldn't believe any of this was happening.
"If your daughter wandered off, we're going to find her."
Ben pulled a pen out from his breast pocket.
"But until then, we need to examine every possible option. I want you to think of anyone who may have wanted to hurt you or your daughter. We need to make a list of possible suspects."
Jade's hands were so cold, even after wearing Ben's gloves, she could hardly hold on to her mug of coffee. She blinked at him. Aisha gave Jade what must have been her 50th hug of the night and stood up. "I'm going to see if I can call in a few more volunteers. Be back soon." Jade watched her friend depart, feeling a wistful longing for something she was too tired and confused to name.
"Suspects," Ben repeated. "Who might have sent you that letter, for one thing?"
That one wasn't hard to answer. Anybody back at Morning Glory?
No good. It's too broad.
Well, what do you want? Who did this cop think he was, making Jade feel like a criminal being brought in for questioning?
"I need names, specific names, and details, where they live, who had the most motive to hurt you or your family."
"I don't know." Jade didn't try to hide her exasperation. She focused on a small speck of dirt beneath her fingernail, begging herself to stay composed. Once she got her daughter back safely, she'd allow her tears to fall. Until then, she had to seize control of her emotions. Ben sighed and softened his expression.
"Look, I know how hard this is for you."
Jade didn't believe him, but she had no energy left to argue.
"Let's back up a little bit, okay? Can I assume the note you received was from someone at your old church?"
She sniffed and nodded. "Yes. Who else had that much reason to hate her as well as her father, enough to send a letter like that?" Ben nodded.
"I'd have to agree."
She tried not to let him see her roll her eyes. Did he think that listening to her testimony once and spending some time together outside in the cold made him an expert on her and her family situation all of a sudden?
"Do you think it could be the pastor retaliating?"
Jade scoffed. "I seriously doubt that."
"We can't take anything for granted,"
Ben reminded her, as if she wasn't already keenly aware of the gravity of her situation. He frowned.
"I hate to be indelicate here, but putting together what you said in church this evening, would I be right to assume that this Pastor
Mitch, Jade supplied the word for him.
"Pastor Mitch," Ben repeated. "Am I right to assume that he is your daughter's biological father?"
Jade kept her eyes on his shoulder. "That's correct." Next thing he'd do was find 2 dolls and tell her to show him how it happened. Ben sighed.
"Well, if you ask me, that makes him a pretty significant suspect right there. Your father attacked him, you exposed him for what he was, and your daughter is his biological offspring."
Jade stared at him. Had he come up with that all by himself? He looked at her, waiting. "Problem with that line of reasoning is that he's dead." Jade's voice was flat.
"He is?"
"Yeah, as of last fall." Jade had read the obituary herself, 2 paragraphs posted online. Pastor Mitch Cobb, beloved church leader, husband, and friend, is now rejoicing eternally in the kingdom of heaven. The irony wasn't lost on Jade to see the pastor who'd preached nothing but faith healings succumb to cancer. She stood up. "I'm going to see if Aisha needs help making those phone calls." She took a step away, but Ben grabbed her by the hand. She yanked herself free instinctively and hissed, "Don't touch me."
"I'm sorry. I know this is difficult for you."
"Actually, officer, I don't think you do." She refused to meet his eyes, knowing that if he was staring at her with even a fraction of the compassion she could detect in his voice, she'd break down and never make it through this night.
I really want to ask you a few more questions. Do you need a break first?
The last thing she wanted to do was sit here with her daughter missing and talk with this trooper, but she was too tired to argue. She shook her head. No, I'm okay.
You're sure?
Yeah. The sooner they got this meeting over with, the sooner she could go back and join the citizens of Glenallen, who right now were braving the ever-dropping temperatures to look for her daughter. It was only a few questions. What was she so afraid of? She took in a deep, choppy breath and gave him a nod. I'm ready. Let's do this.